السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, inshallah we'll have a talk inshallah for maybe 20-25 minutes inshallah, and then after that if you have any questions we can try to answer them inshallah. And I would like to talk about a subject which we all in need of, and especially with every household. And this is mentioned specifically in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that is reported by Imam Ahmad and others, and it's an authentic hadith. The hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that he said ﷺ, إذا أراد الله عز وجل بأهل بيت خيرا أدخل عليهم الرفق. إذا أراد الله عز وجل بأهل بيت خيرا أدخل عليهم الرفق. Which means if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will for a household khayran, goodness, he would أدخل عليهم, he would make them entered upon them ar-Rifq, which is gentleness. So the subject of ar-Rifq, which is a sign, if a household have gentleness and Rifq and pleasantness in the way that they deal with one another with matters of the deen and establishing the deen and everything else, this is a good sign. And that means if they don't, that means they need to do something about it. They need to take the means for them to be upon a rifq or gentleness in all of one's affairs. And the word a-Rifq, which again it's gentleness, it comes from this softness, which is one of the outcome, one of the results of husnul khuluq. When someone has good manners, as a result of that, then that person will have gentleness in dealing with things. And when someone gets extremely angry for a non-valid reason, or becomes extreme even for a valid reason, makes the person not able to think in the proper way, and makes the person away from really going or deciding or acting upon what is right. So usually ar-Rifq, as the ulama, they say it's a result, it's a consequence as a result of husnul khuluq. So if a household, if an individual wants to have ar-Rifq as a gentleness in one's actions and one's speech and one's behavior, and if a person doesn't have this, then the way to fix it is to have husnul khuluq, is to have good manners. And good manners can never be attained unless a person has control over one's anger and one's desires, so that he's not led by these types of things to lead him, whatever. So if he's angry, he acts upon his anger. If she's having a certain desire, then she acts upon it. But rather to follow the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And that's why Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he said to one of his companions, he asked them, teaching them, he says, do you know what ar-Rifq is? So they said to him, say it, explain to us what is ar-Rifq. He says, أن تضع الأمور في مواضعها, that you put things in its right place. الشدة في موضعها واللين في موضعه. The being stern or being very decisive and very clear in some situations, and to be soft in other situations. So it's not always being soft at all times, but rather it's to know exactly when to be decisive and when to be very clear, versus to be soft and overlooking and things like this. So it shows that this is a mixture of showing seriousness and having softness, and this is how a person would attain ar-Rifq. And that's why one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ar-Rafiq, in his actions subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his religion, and how this is something that we see in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that talks about this are so many, and one of which is that what we heard, and the hadith also of Aisha radiallahu anha, that she said that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إن الرفق لا يكون في شيء إلا زانه ولا ينزع من شيء إلا شانه. الرفق, this gentleness, if it's in every matter, it adorns it. And if it's taken away from anything, it contaminates it, makes it not a pleasant thing. And also the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam used to pay attention to those who are with him, and to have this rifq or gentleness dealing with them. Like Malik ibn al-Huwayrith radiallahu anhu, when he said, we came to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in a group of his people, and they stayed with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam for 20 nights, seeking the knowledge from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and then he told them to go back to their families. But the point of what's mentioned in the hadith is that when they stayed for 20 nights, he said, وَكَانَ رَحِيمًا رَفِيقًا. He alayhi salatu wasalam was merciful, and he was rafiqan, very gentle with us. And that's why فَلَمَّا رَأَى شَوْقَنَا إِلَى أَهَلِينَا, when he saw our shawq, yearness to go back, he saw in them that they're missing their families. How can he see that, alayhi salatu wasalam? They did not complain to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, was saying that we're missing our families, we've been here for 20 nights. So when he saw that, and this is the gentleness, seeing what people are concerned about, seeing what people are worried about, and to be there for them, and to give them the concern, to give them the nasiha, to show the attention and the importance of what they're upon. So when he saw that in them, he said, "Irji'u fakunu fihim." He said to them, "Go back to your families, go back to your people, and be among them. وعلموهم, and teach them. وصلوا, and make salah. فإذا حضرت الصلاة فليؤذن لكم أحدكم وليؤمكم أكبركم." And if the salah time comes, let one of you make adhan, and let's the eldest among you to lead you in the salah, because they were all in the same age, so there was no one more knowledgeable than the other. So how the Prophet ﷺ would have that towards them, and this is a meaning that we have to understand, that when you want to act upon your feelings, someone got you angry, the circumstances is making you to get angry. This is the work of Iblis. So the Shara' and the Deen and the Wahy from Allah would put things in the right perspective, having the sabr, having the patience, seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to oppose what we might desire to act upon a certain matter. And that's why this matter is to understand that this is part of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore a person will act upon it. And that's because of, as we heard in the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And that's why he said alayhi salatu wasalam, "Man u'tiya haddahu min ar-Rifq, faqad u'tiya haddahu min al-khayr." Whoever is given his share of gentleness, he's been given the share of khayr, of goodness. وَمَنْ حُرِمَ حَظَّهُ مِنَ الرِّفْقِ حُرِمَ حَظَّهُ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ. And whoever is deprived from his share of gentleness have been deprived from the share of goodness. So it's a choice that a person would choose, whether to be or to attain what is khayr versus to be deprived from it. And how is that? Is by attaining ar-Rifq, by having this great quality, and that is the gentleness that should be present in one's behavior and so on, especially again as we heard in the household, to be there, and that's why there's so many different ways or places where the rifq is shown in, towards one's parents, towards the wife, the spouse, the husband, the children, towards the neighbor, towards the people that you interact with, in even gentleness in changing the evil, forbidding the evil, with the animals even, and there's a hadith that talks about this matter. And all of that is especially in the subject of a tarbiyah, the subject of the tarbiyah, and how is that related to raising the children, and to have the rifq in the way that you would raise a child as to be a man versus a child to be a woman, and how to recognize the differences and not to raise them all at the same way of even dealing with one another. Well, for example, when a child, he's a boy, he's supposed to be raised to be a man, and he's supposed to be prepared to face the world and to be able to deal with all kinds of things. Then this is, the importance of raising them to be that way. That's why sometimes with being clear, of course, and decisive, and not overlooking sometimes, is for the benefit of the child, versus being gentle also in certain situations, and all of that for the goodness of one's child. And this is how the mothers at the time, at the early generations of Islam, they many of the imma of this deen were raised by these great women, those who raised them to be the way they are, the way they were, rahimahumullah. Um, one of the mashayikh, one of the shuyukh of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, his name is Rabi'at ar-Ra'y, and he's one of the narrators of the hadith in Sahih Imam Bukhari, and one of the great men among the tabi'een. Uh, and he was someone that, his father, when he uh, died, or and his wife was pregnant with Rabi'a, and he who's the one that raised them is his mother. And they thought that he died, but actually he came later, after many years. So, but she's the one that raised them to be such a great Imam. Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, he was orphan, and his mother is the one that would take care of him, and she would even warm the water for him to go for the masjid for Salatul Fajr. She would take him to Salatul Fajr to make sure that he makes it for the Salah, and she would take him to the durus and to the matters of knowledge. And the same thing with Imam Malik, that his mother would take him to Rabi'at al-Ra'i, and she would say to him, learn from him the adab, the manners, before you learn ilm and knowledge from him. Right? And the mother, Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he was poor, and she would pick the papers that are thrown in the streets, like in the garbage, not necessarily picking up from the garbage, but she would take from the papers that are being used, so that he would write on the back of it, so that he can learn that way. The mother of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, that we just talked about him, when she would say to him, "Oh my son, seek knowledge, and وَأَنَا أَعُولُكَ بِمِغْزَلِي," and I would support you financially with my mighzal. She would sew clothings, and she would sell it. And then she would say to him, and if you write عشرة أحرف, if you write 10 letters, فانظر هل ترى في نفسك زيادة في الخير, then look, do you find in yourself increase in خير, increase in goodness? So فإن لم ترى ذلك فلا تتعنى. If you don't see that, then don't get yourself tired, because the purpose of knowledge is for it to change you, is to make you a different person. So how she supported her son to be such a great imam, that we learn from him till today. So, and of course, I mean, if we go through this, you would find so many different examples. And this is how the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, with patience, with seeking rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and fulfilling the commands of Allah, and understanding that we will be tested in this life. And as you see the narrations of the hadiths, with Aisha radiallahu anha, and how the Prophet ﷺ will practice this, especially also for the things that causes a person to be extremely angry, or so how to act upon this. This is such an important matter, especially again, as we said, with households to be established upon these meanings, and following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as you see that when the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered the women, for example, to be obedient to their husbands, and ordered the men to be kind to their women, and how that الرفق, something that brings this all together. And this is how they have this gentleness in dealing with things according to the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And to see that the husn al-khuluq, or the good manners, that makes a person busy with the obedience of Allah and the dhikr of Allah and the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is what a person should be upon, inshallah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us steadfast upon the deen of Allah, and to make us patient, and to be steadfast, and to be sincere in the way that we do things with our own selves, with our families, with our children. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept, inshallah. So this is just a short reminder. I just wanted to keep it short before we get into, again, the salasil, or the chains of durus with specific subject, just to make sure that if there's any questions, we can try to talk about them, inshallah, and hopefully we can go on with more subjects later, inshallah. So we'll stop here, inshallah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for each and every one of us, and to make us among those who listen and follow and be obedient to Allah. Inshallah, we continue, inshallah, next week, inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم وجزاكم الله خيرا for coming. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.